Hi everyone, so yes, I am Amanda, and today I'm going to talk to you about overcoming anxiety. Now, no surprises, that has caused me to feel anxious. So first, a little bit about myself. So I've been with Budweiser Brewing Group now for just over 8 years, and I've held several commercial roles from key account manager through to commercial controller for wholesale convenience, leading a large team of account managers. But as I said, today I'm not here to talk specifically about that, but more about overcoming anxiety. And I just want to say that this is my personal experience on coping and managing anxiety. I'm not here as a professional, more a personal expert. I'm really grateful to have this platform, so thank you. And the objective here is just to normalise the conversation around anxiety, and more importantly, hopefully demonstrate to you all how you can achieve and succeed your goals. Because today I sit here as country lead for Ireland, and if you'd have asked me that 4 years ago, I would have said, no, I can't do that. So before I go on into my experience, I first just want to talk about feeling anxious with yourselves. So I guess if you could use the chat function, and Elite, I might just ask you to help me call out anything that people add to the chat. But I guess I've got a question for the forum really, and if you do experience and feel anxiety, what are the symptoms that you feel? So how does anxiety make you feel? And if you feel comfortable enough, please pop it in the chat, because it would be good to understand from you guys. I guess for me, it starts with a feeling like a little fireball in the pit of my stomach, is one of my kind of symptoms to feeling anxious. Elite, I don't know if anyone has added anything into the chat just yet. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, Amanda, you've got quite a few comments, so let me
sorry guys, I was on mute. So people feeling overwhelmed, people feeling inferior, people feeling unproductive, like they can't start anything, and that's exactly how I feel. You kind of get stage fright and it's all piling up and you can't move. Nervous, tummy flutters, sweaty palms, all the classics, avoiding everything, flustered, overwhelmed. It keep going. Wobbly legs, heat, panicked, heat, head in the sand, shaky and lack of confidence, the feeling of dread for what's ahead in my day, hardness in the chest. My God, keep going. Do you want me to keep going?
No, I think it's clear. Like, I think I definitely recognize some of those. I think that not being productive, like, I turn into the biggest procrastinator of all time, and I can't move forward with it. So completely recognize that. Shaking, feeling wobbly, completely agree with like how that makes us feel. So then my second question to the chat is, just take a quick reflection on what are the situations that make you feel anxious. So do you recognize what might make you feel that way? And again, if you want to just pop it in the chat quickly, and we can see what some of the situations might be that make us feel anxious. So we can go through that.
So a clear lack of direction or objectives, a sudden change, presenting, imposter syndrome, the volume of work, making a mistake, using Excel, so that's a good one, talking in front of a large group, being judged if I get something wrong or if I'm late.
Okay, great. Too many tasks as well. I just saw that one pop up, and presenting, new experiences, maybe you're meeting someone new, Like for me, if it's a situation I've not done before, that can also make me feel quite anxious. So yeah, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you sharing some of that, because I know that it's not an easy conversation to have. But I think together we've actually just shared that actually a lot of us do feel anxiety, and it is normal. And the perception often is that anxiety is the enemy, when in fact it's just your body's way of telling you that something demands your attention and it's important. Like me presenting here today, it's important, so naturally I am going to feel anxious about it. But it has taken me time and a lot of self-reflection to get to this point. And in the past, it has been a very big challenge for me to personally manage my anxiety. So I will just, yeah, here we go. So for me, my anxiety manifests itself as this voice of self-doubt in my head, which also happens to be nocturnal. It seems to always come out the minute I get in bed and I'm ready to settle down. But no, my mind has other ideas and it starts to worry and think through every possible scenario that could possibly happen for whatever the situation is that is creating anxiety for me. Now, this voice in the past has been so powerful and persuasive, where it's become so loud and overwhelming for me. And I think overwhelming was one of the feelings that just came out in the chat as well. And today I'd like to share a point in time where my negative thoughts actually span out of control and essentially paralyzed me mentally. And again, we talk about procrastinating and putting it off, like felt paralysis and just couldn't move forward. So a few years back, I put myself in a situation where I was taking everything on alone. So at work, in order for me to succeed, I had to do everything. If I wanted to be considered for that next role, then I must take on every task alone. So that is what I proceeded to do. Take on more tasks, and that list piled up. And when colleagues and line manager asked me how I was, yeah, fine, thanks, was my standard response. That word, fine. In the midst of this ever-growing task list, there was an annual joint business planning customer meeting on the horizon, which I think for a lot of you on the call will recognise is a key date in the commercial calendar year. So that was coming up. You can see it coming over the hill. But now I'm stretched beyond my means, and that is prime conditions for anxiety. It loves it, it thrives on it. And that voice of self-doubt proceeded to tell me, you can't do this, you are not good enough. And as the days to the meeting ticked away, the voice grew louder. And I'd not started to prepare my content, as in get it into a presentable format. I mean, I'd had team meetings and aligned with my line manager on the direction. Yeah, great, let's go with that. But hadn't put pen to paper. So it gets to the night before the meeting, and I'm now in full agreement with this voice. I can't do it. And those negative thoughts paralyzed me. So I sat up for what must have been most of the night and stared at my laptop screen, but didn't do anything. So the morning comes around, and probably like something from a zombie movie, I somehow get myself together and get to the meeting point where I'm meeting my line manager an hour before the customer meeting. So my line manager comes in, sits down, keen to see like everything we've discussed, quickly go through the headlines as we go in. And on a page, I've literally got one image and a couple of sentences for a full, like, commercial conversation. So in that moment, I'd failed and I felt like I shattered into 1,000 pieces. So what had happened? So I think first I had unrealistic expectations on myself to be perfect. And I was putting way more pressure on me than anybody else was. And I didn't talk to anyone because I thought that was a sign of weakness. So it just been like, yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Everything's going fine, thanks. So from this point then, how am I going to manage and stop this voice from holding me back and reaching my goals and my potential? So for me, I found 3 coping mechanisms that help me manage my anxiety, and I guess it will be personal to everyone, but this is what helped me move forward. Talking. Now, I know it seems the most obvious thing to say, and it's easier to say, but it works. Trust me, it really does work. So given the situation I'd put my line manager in, I'd had to tell them what had happened and confront how my own anxiety had essentially crippled me. Fortunately, they were supportive, and for a long time, my line manager became the only person that I did speak to about feeling anxious, partly because we'd been I'd put us in that situation together. Work-wise, I was given the time I needed, but they also helped me to prioritise, encourage the conversation. But as a leader, they actually also spent time to better understand me and how they could support me in reaching my full potential, which is really great leadership, and something I actually learned from as well. So whilst this was like a very, very low point for me, it was actually, on reflection, also very pivotal in defining a way forward for me too and my anxiety. From there, I became more confident, and I actually started speaking to more people about how I was feeling. So actually with friends and family and with different colleagues. So now when I'm feeling anxious, I'm quick to say, I'm probably a bit too quick to say actually. I'm like, oh my God, I'm feeling anxious. But then whoever I say that to, I start a conversation and we talk through, okay, well, what might be making me feel anxious? You know, what have I got on? What other things do I understand it? And that really helps me to rationalize my feelings. And if I can rationalize my feelings, my head is clear and I will always be able to take action and move forward and ultimately silence that voice. So finally, just on talking, I've also found that the more I talk about how I feel, the more people confide in me. And actually, in turn, we start to help each other. And I think that is just so powerful. So moving to the next kind of coping skill for me, it was about recognizing the triggers. So some of my triggers, as you've heard, is self-pressure, me trying to reach those unachievable standards that no one else has set but me. In the evenings is where my overthinking tends to begin, and that can lead to worry, and then I don't get enough sleep. So the next day, trigger 2 kicks in, sleep deprivation. And you know, without a clear head, it becomes more difficult to go through the coping mechanisms and think clearly. So I have, even in the middle of the night, journaled what I'm feeling if I'm awake, and then why I'm awake and what the situation is linked to that feeling. And then I've got it written down, and it's also good just to write down, because then you feel like you can close the book and maybe go back to sleep. But by having that journal, I've got it as a bit of a diary to also reflect on. which has really enabled me to better prepare for future situations. So now I will look ahead in either my work calendar or my personal events and just check in the diary what is coming. I recognise I've written it down in my journal previously that that might be a trigger for me. And then I can plan the time to think clearly, take action and be prepared, which better manages my anxiety. Now, it's always going to be there. So for me, it's about the managing, which recognising those triggers really helps you to prepare on. And then just the final point is saying yes, which probably feels really counterintuitive, and it's easier said than done, because that voice is always saying absolutely not. However, if you think about it, and I think it came up in some of the points you put in the chat as well, is new situations and the unknown are also triggers. So you need to say yes. And I know it feels like a rock, you're between a rock and a hard place there. So I'm not talking about, you know, if presenting makes you feel anxious, I'm not saying tomorrow go and present to 500 plus people. You can take small steps. So why don't you try and volunteer to lead or present in a team meeting where you're with colleagues you're more comfortable with, and you can maybe present sat down in that forum because your direct team is a little bit more comfortable. Then when you're ready, take it to the next level, present maybe to 10 people in the wider team, and maybe try and stand up if you feel like you can. It's all baby steps, but when you do that, you kind of get a notch on your belt and you're more comfortable because you've been in that situation before. I found that the more that I have said yes, the better I manage my anxiety. Putting myself in new situations, getting those new experiences has really helped in building my resilience. And really, no one wants to miss out. So you don't want to have that FOMO and fear of missing out on something great. So absolutely saying yes is key. So I'm going to leave you with this. Today caused me to feel anxious because it's important and the conversation matters. And so I said yes. So thank you for listening. If you want to ask any questions, I think we might have a few minutes left to go through any questions that might have come in. I'm happy to take them, but also, you know, more than happy to pick up offline, because I fully appreciate how challenging this conversation is sometimes to have in a wider forum. But thank you so much, Elite, for giving me the forum to share my experience today.
No, that's brilliant. We've had so many responses from the delegates. Let me read a few out, actually. How important is it as well to know when to say no? Because saying yes too much lead to being overwhelmed and that the floodgates open, and so all of a sudden you've just got too much to do because you've promised something to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's difficult, right? Because of where we live now, and obviously COVID's not really helped that. Like, we're available all the time because actually there's been no travel, and WhatsApp and Teams Messenger, and you're available all the time, and sometimes it comes in faster than you can read it. But again, that is something I had to learn to do. So in that kind of moment I shared with you, it was because I was continually saying yes and doing everything alone. I'm pretty confident you're all part of a team. It's not just one person running the wholesale business that you might work for today. You are part of a team. And what through talking with my line manager in the first instance, it was very regular, and I'd say, okay, this is what I've got on, this is what I've said yes to, and these are the number of hours in a day. And then talking with someone helps you to prioritize, and then you just have to be like, no, I can't do that this week because X, Y, and Z is a little bit more critical, but, you know, can anybody else help us, or can we review it again next week in terms of managing that workload? So I used to say yes, as I said, because I thought that was the way to progress, but you actually need a team, and that's what they're there for as well.
You almost need a ticketing system, don't you, to prioritize things and manage other people's expectations.
Yeah,
I've got a question from Catherine Hunt. What if you feel, due to worry and anxiety, that you have no one to confide in?
So at Budweiser as well, we have business resource groups. So if you don't feel like you've got an ally, like internally we've got Validium, which is a mental well-being partner that you can also reach out to. So if you really don't feel comfortable with that, then yeah, there is always like external people that maybe don't know you and you're more comfortable in doing that. And as I say, it might sound really difficult, but I'm sure there's one person, and you don't have to give everything over in the first conversation, but there'll be someone who feels exactly the same. We just kind of proved that in the chat when we were asking, do you feel anxious? What situations make you feel anxious? It was all the same messages coming through. So yeah, I think, you know, I know businesses are doing a lot more for mental well-being internally, and there should always be a forum, whether that's on the phone or a chat with, if you're not comfortable with someone that you know. And if anyone feels like that today, I am more than happy as well to speak to people not outside of this forum about my experiences and how I managed it.
Brilliant. Someone said that normalising anxiety and pressure points is also really important. How important is it to accept that you're always going to carry a sort of comfortable level of discomfort day to day when you're just, you know, under a lot of stress?
Yeah. But as I said, it's your body's way of saying something's important, and it might not be about a piece of work. If you're in a burning building, you're going to feel anxious, and that's your body's way of saying, come on, you need to react and get yourself out of it. So it's an emotion. And I think as well, I was actually talking to one of my friends about it this week in preparation for this, and it's a similar feeling to excited as well. So actually, like, they're very similar feelings. So yeah, they're never going to go away. I think why it's important to normalize it is then it becomes manageable. I was internalizing everything because I thought no one else felt the way that I do. And so it kind of was so internalized that it erupted, and I kind of had a bit of a meltdown, as we heard in my experience. So that's why the conversation is so important to normalize it, because then it becomes manageable rather than something that is internal and you're overthinking and kind of spiraling and making worse.
One of the hard things is, I suppose, in being open about anxiety, you're telling everyone that you can't cope, and that's something that some people might feel nervous about. It's actually admitting that you can't, you've got too much. And I guess some people actually might have way too much on, but they feel like it's their fault that they can't handle it. But the reality is that no one can do that much.
No, exactly. And it links back to saying yes, saying no, making sure your line manager is aware. Now, you don't need to, again, if you're not comfortable, necessarily overshare how you're feeling, but like it will be clear to see workload versus the time that you've got. And there are tools that your line manager should absolutely be able to support on and help you prioritize as a leader within your business. So it is difficult, and I think that's why I didn't used to speak, because I thought, if they think I can't cope, I'm not going to be able to do it. But actually, if you look at my career trajectory, from the moment I started speaking, I was promoted every year. So talking does really help.
Julian Smith has said something really good, actually. Anxiety is a very common issue that affects anyone moving into more senior roles, expectant responsibility and instant leadership without weakness. Humans don't often work like that.
Exactly. I think actually, I think probably some of my team are on here, so they might come in the chat and say, no, you're talking rubbish now, Amanda. But when I did step up to lead quite a big team of account managers, as Julian says, that was my biggest fear. Like, if I feel like this, how are they going to trust me to go forward? But actually, I absolutely enjoyed it. And I was able to coach and support because I felt like I'd been through similar situations. So when I could see maybe what they were going through, I had that experience to draw on. And I think empathy is a real key attribute to being a good leader. And actually, my experience with anxiety, I think, actually made me a better leader. I'm saying that the team might say different, but I think it really did help me.
I've had a really nice message from Steve Smith, who says that men are the worst because males tend to be slaves to their ego and won't open up or admit to imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. Again, it's anxiety affects everyone, and I do think even when it comes to mental health, like again, I'm not an expert, but men are not as forthcoming in wanting to talk. So I think that's why it's really important in having allies and this forum to do that. And if you've got a direct team and you're doing team building, as Chloe said in her earlier chat as well, make sure you've got a piece in there just around health and well-being. Doesn't have to be like a group therapy session, but really bringing the conversation to the team.